This week we're looking at Washington and we're looking at Texas in a semifinal game that pits two of the best quarterbacks and two of the most consistent teams from this past season. Champions of the Pac-12, champions of the Big 12. And at the end of it, we're going to tell you who's going to win and why. So stick around and we're going to dive right in. First thing we want to look at is the head coaches. And the head coaching matchup in this one is really interesting. You got Steve Sarkisian and Kalen DeBoer. Coach Sark, he's coached for some of the best coaches in the game. He was with Pete Carroll early in his career. Really, Norm Chow brought him in from BYU because he played at BYU as a quarterback, and then he bounced around a little bit, went to Washington. He's actually the head coach at Washington for 5 years and went 34-29. Whenever he went in there, they were 0-for, and he brought him all the way to a 7-8 win type program, and then SC came back, got him, brought him back to be the head coach. And we all know that didn't quite work out. He lasted for about a year and a half, went 12-6, and then obviously had some off the field issues with some drinking and things like that. But after that, he bounced around a little bit. We went to Alabama as an analyst, then went to Atlanta as offensive coordinator for the Falcons, and then he ended up bouncing back to Alabama as the OC. Really big season there in 2020. Ended up getting the head coaching job at Texas the next year. Has been 25-13. Has done nothing but continue to build that roster and just the program overall from top to bottom. You can see how that time with Nick Saban really helped him out as far as the program and how he ends up building from the inside out, especially focusing on the offensive and defensive lines. He's done a really good job and obviously done a great job getting Texas into the playoffs in year 3. And he's done an amazing job, and I think he's probably one of the better coaches, and he's going to be a great coach. Sark's definitely not going anywhere. He's going to have his team in contention from now on. And then also, when you look at Kalen DeBoer, this is a guy that's won everywhere he's been. He was the head coach at Sioux Falls, which is an NAIA school, from 2005 to 09. Won 3 NAIA national championships, had a runner-up there as well. Was 67-3 as a head coach at an NAIA school. So think about that again, 67-3. That's unreal. After he's a head coach at Sioux Falls for 5 seasons, he ended up going into Division I football. Southern Illinois OC for about 3 years. Went to Eastern Michigan as a quarterbacks coach for 2 years. Went to Fresno as an OC, then went to Indiana for 1 year in 2019. Had Penix there at Indiana as well. He worked for Tom Allen, great coach. Great man, and right there had a really good season 2019. Then he went to Fresno State as the head coach. 2020, 2021, went 12-6 there. And since he's been at Washington, he's got a 24-2 record. So if you're looking at just his overall record as a head coach, it's unbelievable. Only lost 11 games from what I can see right there in 9 seasons. So right there, unbelievable. He's won championships at the NAIA level. And then, of course, since he's been at Washington, done nothing but continue to gain traction and found a way to get into the playoffs. As far as the head coaching is concerned, who I think has the better head coach is kind of a personal deal right here because I think both of them are really good. But me personally, I played football in an NAIA school, and I know how good football coaches have rolled through there. You know, you got Hugh Freeze, Tom Allen was an NAIA guy. I think that's kind of how they had the connection there to get him to Indiana. But I'm going to lean with Kalen DeBoer just because he's won national championships. I know it's not at the level as Steve Sarkisian, but he's won national championships as a head coach. Even though Coach Sark's been with Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, those guys are absolute legends. We have to go with the guy that's actually done it as a head coach, and that's Kalen DeBoer. Next we're going to look at is just the coaching staff overall. Really looking at the coordinators. And for Washington, Ryan Grubb, he was a big name last year in the coaching search. And he's been with Kalen DeBoer in a lot of different spots. He was with him at Sioux Falls, Eastern Michigan, and they've been really successful. He's their OC and QB's coach, and I think he's a rising star. He's going to end up getting a head coaching job here sooner rather than later. And wherever he goes ends up being, they're going to have a really good offense, and they're going to have a good chance to be successful. So really good OC. And then you're looking at the defense coordinator, William Inge. Came from Fresno with him, and he's a 4.25 guy. Worked with Coach Allen over there at Indiana. And they've overperformed at times. They've found ways to win even though they may be a little bit undermatched over there on that side of the football. Not just amazing high-end level talent, especially on the back end or at linebacker. So they've done a really good job defensively, especially schematically, to help themselves out. And then also, the last guy I talk about is Jamarcus Shepard. He's associate head coach, passing game coordinator, and he came from Purdue. And you think about what they had been doing at Purdue with Jeff Brom. So he's seen a lot of different stuff and had a really good pedigree and has done a great job this year. Obviously, working with the wide receivers, one of the best groups in the country. I think he's a great coach as well. So that's just another guy on the staff that is going to end up being a star as far as coaching ranks are concerned. Now looking at Texas side, you got Kyle Flood. He was a head coach at Rutgers whenever Greg Schiano went to the NFL. He's the OC for Texas right now and has done a really good job. He's been there since 2021. And he worked with Sark. He was their O-line coach at Atlanta when he was there with the Falcons. So really good coach, done a great job. And, of course, Coach Sark definitely has his hands on the offense as well. And then you got Pete Kwiatkowski. It's a great name, Kwiatkowski. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. Sounds right. It's a crazy spelling, a lot of W's in there. Anyway, he's a DC for Texas, and he came from Washington. So he was there at Washington with Jimmy Lake, and he was there with Chris Peterson. So you know the pedigree that those guys have. And then the last guy we want to talk about with Texas is Jeff Banks. And you all know the story with Jeff Banks, and he's got his wife or partner, whatever you're going to call it, old pole assassin. And you know the story of maybe there's a trick-or-treater there. There's a little bit of litigation about maybe a performance monkey biting a kid or something along those lines. All that is alleged. Not sure exactly how that worked out, but that's about 2 or 3 years back. Of course, Pole Assassin, one of the greatest athletes in the adult entertainment industry as far as the dancer. She does some amazing things is what I've heard. And obviously has a monkey that sometimes comes out on stage and helps out. But that monkey got a little wild, bit a kid, hate it for him. But there's a little bit of litigation. Not sure how that panned out for him. But with that being said, if you're just picking coaching staff, how are you going to pick against Jeff Banks and the Pole Assassin? So right there, we're going to give a point to Texas. So, I mean, I think all these coaching staffs have some guys that have been head coaches and are going to be head coaches. So just the difference there is one guy is able to recruit a woman whose stage name is Pole Assassin and the other one can't. Next thing we look at is just talent. And the first point we're going to give out is for the talent composition rating, which sets the blue chip ratio of guys on their roster. And right here, Texas is ranked 6th overall with 9 5-stars, 47 4-stars, 27 3-stars. And they have lots of depth of blue chip players, both sides of the ball, especially on the fronts. The O-line for Texas is really deep, and they got a lot of highly rated players out of high school. And also the defensive front is absolutely loaded with some 4 or 5-star players that have really shown up, especially in Big 12 play this year, of how they've been able to control the line of scrimmage. Looking at Washington, they were actually ranked number 26, which they had 0 5-stars, 27 4-stars, 49 3-stars. But the obvious thing about this is Washington obviously does a great job of development, and that'll come into play, especially in the next section where we talk about the NFL players. Next thing we're going to talk about are just draft prospects. Texas, they've got a couple guys that are probably first-round guys. You got Jatavian Sanders, tight end, rated the number 3 tight end, number 25 overall. Xavier Worthy, number 6 wide receiver, number 28 overall. Devondre Sweat, a D lineman, number 17 D lineman, but number 29 overall. So those are the guys that kind of have a first-round grade. And you got Quinn Ewers is kind of on the fence. Not sure if he's coming back. He's already said that he thinks he's going to come back, but it's one of those things. If you come back with a first-round grade, there's no telling what's going to happen right there. If he comes out in the playoff and absolutely blows it up, he's got a good chance to be, mid-first round to late first-round draft pick, I believe. But right now, he's rated as number 7 QB, number 38 overall. We're looking at Washington's roster, though. They've got a lot of guys that are ranked highly and definitely first-round dudes. You got Penix, number 9 overall player, number 3 quarterback. Odunze, number 4 wide receiver, number 12 overall. Braylon Trice, a D end, who's an absolute guy. Number 5 as a defensive end and number 12 overall. You got Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan. So those are two other receivers. So those are 3 receivers. Romeo Odunze, who's number 4 in his position. You got Jalen Polk, who's number 61 overall, then Jalen McMillan, who's number 110 overall. So those are 3 receivers right there. Having those weapons on the outside are really elite. With all that being said, we're going to lean with Washington as far as the NFL talent for a point right here, and really just the top end talent. Penix is definitely a top 10 pick. Odunze is probably top 15, top 20. Next thing we're going to look at is just defense. Obviously, defense does win championships, and that's what we're looking at right here. Texas is number 23 overall. Washington is number 90 overall. Texas is giving up 321.7 yards per game. Washington is giving up 396.9 yards per game. So right there, that's about 70-plus yards difference. Texas is giving up 17.54 points per. And Washington's giving up 23.62. So that's just a touchdown difference as far as scoring. The thing that really sticks out, though, right here is Texas gives up 2.9 yards per rush. That's unreal. They're actually number 2 in the country with that. Then Washington's 4.3 yards per rush, so very average right there. The one thing that a lot of people have been talking about, though, is the passing defense for Texas, and they're number 95 in passing. That's 240.8 yards per game. But the thing that they always fail to mention is that Washington is like a number 120 in passing defense as well. So it's kind of a mixed bag on that one. So on this one, very obvious. Texas's defense is way better than Washington's defense, not only physically, but then just basically making somebody one-dimensional. With Washington, you're able to run the ball pretty consistently. And then also, they're not very good at covering the pass either. But right here on this one, Texas can at least make you one-dimensional. And I'm sure that's what they're hoping to do, is try to make those guys where it's obvious they have to throw the ball every down. Now they can tee off on the passer and hopefully get some pressure on Penix. Next metric we're going to look at is just the offense overall, and they're very tight. I mean, both offenses are really good. Coach Sark and DeBoer are both offensive guys, so you can really see they have a large focus on that area, and they obviously get lots of publicity because they're really good. But anyway, Texas is averaging 36.15 points per game, and Washington's averaging 37.69. So right there, it's just about a 1.5 point difference. For Washington, and you're looking at yards per game. Texas is number 9 in the country with 475.9, and Washington is number 12 with 469.1. So that's about a 6-yard difference as far as per game, which is not very big, and neither is the points per game. So right there, everything is pretty tight. Texas runs the ball a little bit better, not just a ton better per rush. But on this one, whenever you're just looking at the outside talent and the quarterback is what I really try to look for right here on this. And I'm going to lean with Washington because I just think Penix is the best quarterback in the playoff. Now, I know Ewers is really good, but he had some misses, especially in the Big 12 championship. Everybody was talking about how good he did. He had about 2 or 3 balls that I'd be mad if our high school quarterback missed. So there are times when he is a little bit inaccurate, and I've really not seen many inaccurate balls from Penix over this past season. So I'm going to go with Washington as far as the offense, and this is one that's a little bit more subjective because they're so comparable as far as the stats are concerned. But I'm going to go with Washington. Now we're going to look at just Texas' offensive line versus Washington's defensive line. Washington does have a first-round guy, Braylon Trice, up front. They've got 5 sacks, leads the team. Zion Tupaloa Fatui has 3.5 sacks. He's the second leading guy right there. They don't just have a ton of sacks on the season. And Texas is extremely talented up front. They've got some road graders and guys that are going to be really big-time NFL players up front. And they've ran the ball consistently all season against some pretty good defenses. They have given up some sacks this year, and we'll talk about that as far as the pass rush later, but they have given up sacks at times. Some of it's with Ewers, some of it's schematically. But on this one, just as far as the talent, as far as the consistency all year, I'm going to have to lean with Texas's offensive line is going to have an advantage against Washington's defensive line in this one. Now we're going to look at Washington's O-line versus Texas's defensive line. Whenever it comes to Washington's offensive line, they ran the ball effectively, especially against Oregon. If you watch that Pac-12 championship game, they actually ran the ball really well and really consistently, but they haven't ran it consistently enough to pull away from many teams. And I'm not sure if that's one of the things that they really want to do or if they just want to throw the ball around. They're obviously leading the nation in passing. But whenever it comes down to these playoff games and tight football games against talented teams, you're going to have to run the ball to put the games away and hold on to the football at times. But they've done a really good job of pass pro. The most amazing thing, we'll talk about the sacks and stuff again because I think it's one of those things that we just have to give a point to. They hardly get sacked. The amount of times that they throw the ball, they do a great job of protection. They do a great job of chipping. They do a great job of changing formations. And obviously Penix does a great job of having awareness and understanding and being on the same page with the offensive line of knowing where the hots are and where to get the ball out to. Talking about Texas's defensive line, they got some absolute dogs up front. Devondre Sweat, he's a first-round guy, high-profile guy. He's only got 2 sacks on the season. They've got a couple other guys. You got Ethan Burke, 5.5 sacks. Byron Murphy's got 5. And then Barron Sorrell has 4. So right there, those are guys right there that can get after the quarterback. They have a lot of depth, and they can get after him. The thing they're going to have to do with Penix, they're going to have to hope that they can get a pass rush with just 4 up front, and they're going to have to win their one-on-ones. And I think they can. They have enough guys that are athletic enough to win a couple one-on-ones and get 2 or 3 sacks in the game, and that could be the difference if they can get after the quarterback just a little bit and speed him up some. As far as the points concerned on this one, the thing they kind of put over the top for me is the rushing statistics. Texas's front is number 2 overall in rushing. They give up less than 90 yards a game, and I'm not sure if Washington's going to be able to run the ball. Now, they were able to get some stuff going against Oregon, but I don't think they've seen a front like what Texas has as far as the depth and the size. So I'm going to have to give the edge right here on this one to Texas's defensive line. Hope you guys kind of get the theme that I really think that up front is going to be what wins these games, especially whenever you get into the playoffs. And the next thing we're going to look at is just the running game. Whose offense is the better run team and who's going to be able to carry this? Obviously, Texas is number 23 overall. They average about 190 yards a game, 4.9 yards a carry. Another thing to be aware of is the injury to Jonathan Brooks, torn ACL against TCU, but he'd already put up 1,100 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns. So when you're looking at those rushing statistics, most of that was with Jonathan Brooks in the backfield. So they did a good job replacing him, especially in the Big 12 championship game. So they do have depth there at the running back spot, but that's a big blow, not having Jonathan Brooks out there. Washington averages 125.2 per game, so right there about 55 yards less, and then averages about 0.4 yards less as far as per carry. So right there, obviously, Texas has the better rushing offense. Now, Texas is number 3, giving up 80.8 yards per game, 2.87 per rush. That's unreal. So under 3 yards a rush. And then Washington is not bad. They're giving up 133.8, but giving up 4.26 yards per rush. So Washington's run defense is not awful. They're not bad. But Texas is obviously getting a point right here. Number 3 in the country, giving up less than 3 yards a rush. Good point right here for Texas. Next thing to look at here is the pass rush and pass protection. As far as sacks allowed, Texas is number 63 in the country. They've been sacked 26 times. That's 2 per game. So they average giving up 2 sacks per game. Washington, for the amount of times that they've thrown the ball, they're number 5 in the country. They've only given up 11 sacks. That's 0.85 per game. So less than a sack a game. To be an offense that's leading the country in passing and being number 5 and only allowing 0.85 sacks per game is unreal. And I think that's a huge testament to the coaching staff, huge testament to Penix and the O-line being on the same page, knowing where their hots are, sorting things out, and obviously just the awareness that Penix has to get the ball out of his hands and give his guys a chance. Looking at the defensive side, Texas is number 37 in the country. They've had 32 sacks this year, 2.46 sacks per game, so pretty solid. Washington is number 120 in the country in sacks, with 19 all season, with 1.46 sacks per game. So number 120 in sacks. That is a huge discrepancy right there. They're going to have to find a way to get pressure on the quarterback, and I think what that's going to end up doing is they're going to have to try to manufacture pass rush, bring linebackers, bring somebody to try to get pressure on the quarterback, especially in obvious passing situations. I just don't think they have the guys up front where they can win their one-on-ones, and obviously you got a couple guys that are really good. They can chip, they can double, they can do different things to try to mitigate those guys that they know are their elite pass rushers. But even with that being said, I know Texas's pass rush is a lot better, but I think it's one of those things. Texas pass rush isn't going to be able to get 2 Penix. Nobody's got 2 them all year. Sacked less than 1 time per game, which is unreal with the way that they throw the football. So on this one, I have to give Washington a point right here on this one, even though I know I'm probably going to catch a little bit of flack on this one, just for the fact that Texas is giving up 2 sacks per game. Really feels going to be the issue. Going to go pretty quick right here. The offensive pass ratings for Washington, number 1 in the country, average 343 yards a game. Texas is number 18, so again, not bad. They're averaging 286 yards a game, but it's still nearly 60 yards less than what Washington is throwing for a game. So Washington's going to get a point on this one. Defensive pass ratings, everybody's been talking about how Texas is going to have an issue guarding the pass. They're number 95 in the country, give up 6.75 per pass, 11.26 per completion, 240 yards a game. But, and this is one that nobody talks about, Washington is number 120 in the country in passing defense as well. So they're way down there as well. They're deeper in the rankings than what Texas is. They're giving up 6.57 per completion, which is a little bit better than Texas per completion. But then they're giving up 263.2 yards per game. So giving up 23 extra yards more than Texas, and everybody's been talking about how bad Texas's pass rankings are. And I think that one thing about that is whenever you're the number 3 country as far as stopping the run, they're going to have to throw the ball on you. That's the only thing they can do. If they can't run the ball, they're going to have to throw it. So I think that's one of the reasons why Texas's pass defense is so low, because their rush defense is so good that people almost give up on and just start trying to sling the ball around and find a way to get in space. So right there, the rankings even show on this one. Going to have to give Texas another point right here for pass defense. As far as special teams are concerned, there is a little bit of an advantage in this one. If you're looking at kickers, it's 28 of 34 on field goals. It's 82.4%. Grady Gross has only attempted 17 field goals. So kicker from Texas has attempted twice as many field goals and made 82.4% as opposed to 76.5% of the 17 field goals that Grady Gross has attempted. As far as kickoffs, there's a little bit of a lean for Texas as well, 19.8 yards versus 15.7 yards. The only thing really as far as special teams that are any different at all are that the Texas kicker has attempted twice as many field goals and has a better percentage. So I'd say their kicker is just a little bit more consistent and has had the opportunity out there to prove himself. So I'm going to have to go with Texas as far as special teams advantage in this one. Next thing to look at is the skill guys, how they match up. And both offenses have elite skill guys, without a doubt. So you're looking at Texas' offensive guys, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, Jatavian Sanders at tight end. And then Washington has 3 elite receivers out there that are going to be drafted this year. And then they've got a tight end, running back. Those guys get out of the backfield and catch the ball really well. So I feel like both defensive backfields are going to have an issue and are probably going to give up quite a bit of yards unless they can get a pass rush without having to get in those one-on-one situations against some of the better receivers in the country. So on this one, I'm giving both offenses a point. So right here, Texas offense against the DBs of Washington are going to get a point. And also Washington's offense against Texas DBs are also going to get a point. Should be one of those things if they can just throw and catch and not give up sacks, which Texas is a little bit more prone to giving up sacks and some pressure, then it's going to be a big night for both sides of the ball. This thing might end up being a track meet with some really good skill players, really good quarterbacks on both sides of the ball. I'm going to roll through just some of the factors that I think that coach is looking for, especially in a game like this. What are going to be the key factors? And first one to think about is turnover margin. Who's going to win the turnover battle? And through the season, Texas is +7, Washington is +1. So right here, Texas has lost 16 and Washington's lost 17. So the difference is whose defense is able to create more havoc and create turnovers. And that's obviously the Texas defense. They forced 23 when Washington's only forced 18. So right here, giving a point to Texas as far as turnover margin is concerned. Next thing to look at is red zone goal line. And of course, we just talked about it. Auburn's kicker has kicked a lot more field goals, and the team that scores touchdowns in the red zone is going to be the one that wins, because I think they're going to roll up and down the field, but then it's going to come down to key situations in the red zone, and whoever scores touchdowns is going to win. Texas's defense has given up touchdowns on 46% of their trips, and Texas's offense has scored on 49% of their trips. as far as touchdowns. We don't count field goals. We don't care about that. Both of them are pretty solid kickers. They'll make their field goals for the most part. So the defense is giving up 46% touchdowns. They're only scoring 49%. Now, you look at Washington, it's the exact opposite. They're scoring at a 70% rate of touchdowns, so a lot higher, but then they're also giving up 70% on the defensive side. So it's one of those things, pick your poison. Who's going to win that right there? I know defense is going to travel, and defense typically wins in these playoff games and big football games, and I'm going with Texas since everything's pretty comparable. One of them's bad on offense, one of them's bad on defense. In the red zone goal line area, I'm going to have to go with the defense, and that's Texas right here because they're only giving up 46% touchdowns opposed to 70% from Washington. Last thing we're going to look at is 3rd and 4th down conversion rate, and who's going to win that? And it's very similar to like the red zone goal line tap deal. Texas's defense is only giving up 26.5%. Washington's defense is giving up 40.3%. I would assume that 26.5% is obviously they're really good against the run, but then also Washington's offense is 10% better at 48.3% to 38.5% for Texas as far as converting on 3rd downs. 4th downs a little bit different here on this one. So Texas's 4th down D is 46% of giving up 1st downs on 4th down, but Washington is only giving up 42.9%. So it's a little bit better there for Washington on 4th down, kind of and 3rd down conversions than Texas was this past year. As far as what we're looking for, Washington was 3 out of 4 better on this one, so I'm gonna have to give this point to Washington. Washington's probably gonna have to throw the ball even when it's those 3rd and shorts, 4th and shorts. They're probably still gonna have to get that ball out in space because they're not gonna be able to run the ball against that front. But all year they've been able to convert in key situations, a little bit more so than what Texas has. Last thing we're going to look at right here is just intangibles. And not just a ton of intangibles that you can just see off the top of your head, but with the game being in New Orleans and Texas right there, it's not very far for Texas to travel, not very far for their fans to travel. So I'm going to have to give just a little bit of an advantage for Texas. It's going to be almost like a home game probably. I'd say 60-70% of the crowd is going to be for Texas, and they're going to be excited. They're going to be absolutely fired up to be able to see Longhorns play in the playoffs. Not going to be something that Washington hadn't really seen. They've gone to some tough environments, but on the big stage, having the home crowd, or at least a bigger crowd than the opposition, is going to be huge for Texas. I think it's going to be a bit of an advantage. We're going to give Texas a point on this one as far as intangibles for that home crowd advantage they're going to have in New Orleans. Now we're going to look at Quinn Ewers and Michael Penix. Who's got the advantage here as far as statistics? Ewers threw for about 1,000 yards less. Penix threw 4,200, obviously leading the country in passing. Surprisingly, Penix is only 65.9% completion. Ewers is 70.7%, so a little bit better as far as completion percentage. Penix has obviously been a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the country all year. Ended up being a Heisman runner-up. Has been an absolute guy for years. 33 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Ewers not throwing the ball nearly as much. 21 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. This is a really good quarterback matchup. I think Ewers is a top 7-8 quarterback in the nation. And I think next year will probably be a top 3 or 4. And he's going to be a high draft pick as well if he comes back. But this year, with these teams, going to have to lean with Michael Penix just with the experience and the knowledge of this offense and the way that he's able to just get the ball out there on time, know where his hots are, not take sacks. Michael Penix is just a little bit better than Quinn Ewers, so I'm going to have to give the point to Washington right here for a quarterback comparison. I think Penix is probably the best quarterback in the playoff. I think Ewers might be second. So adding this one up, it's looking like Texas has the advantage right here pretty substantially. We've got Texas with 13 points to Washington having 8. And Texas is favored right here in this one by Las Vegas by about 4 points. And we're going to go with Texas right here as well. We're going to take them to win, we're going to take them to cover. I just think that the fronts on both sides of the ball are going to be so substantial as far as pushing towards Texas. I think both teams have really good quarterbacks, really good skill players, but I think the defensive front of Texas, the way that they can make Washington one-dimensional and obviously run the ball on the other side as well against Washington's defense is going to be what determines this one whenever it gets down to the second half and they kind of maybe slow down the quarterbacks a little bit, slow down those skill guys. Unless this thing ends up being a 55-48, I think Texas is going to end up controlling lines of scrimmage and finding a way to win this one and make their way into the national championship game. But let us know in the comments what you think, where we missed. But we'll see you guys again in the next video.